Unaware, the wife he divorced to marry her best friend had just won the $300 million government infrastructure contract that would save his failing company. Daniel Brooks spotted Amara Okafor across the glittering charity gala and laughed out loud, his voice slicing through the string quartet like a blade. He was already halfway drunk on champagne and victory, Vanessa Moore clinging to his arm in a backless red gown that screamed mistress turned fiancée. Her diamond ring, the one he'd bought with the last of his liquidity, flashing every time she tossed her hair. Cameras from the society pages hovered nearby, because tomorrow Daniel was set to sign the very contract that would make Brooks Construction whole again. And tonight, he wanted the world to see him on top. He strode straight to Amara, who stood alone near the balcony doors in a simple black sheath dress that cost more than most people made in a year, but looked almost modest next to Vanessa's desperation. And Daniel smirked, loud enough for the circle of industry vultures to hear. "Look who showed up, my ex-wife. Still trying to play in the big leagues," he announced, swirling his glass so the champagne sloshed dangerously close to her shoes. "Tell me, Amara, did you come to beg for a job once I'm running the show again? Because after the divorce, you'll never work in this industry again." "Sweetheart, not without my name," Vanessa giggled, high and cruel, leaning in to stage whisper. "She's just bitter, baby. Everyone knows Meridian Infrastructure only won that contract because they pitied the poor little divorcee." The crowd tittered. Phones lifted discreetly. Daniel raised his glass in a mocking toast. "To Amara Okafor, may she finally learn her place." Then, because he could never resist twisting the knife, he leaned in close enough for only her to hear, but loud enough for the microphones to catch. "Without me, you're nothing, and tomorrow the whole country will watch me prove it." Amara didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't give them the scene they wanted. She simply lifted her chin, dark eyes steady as the first rumble of thunder rolled over the city skyline behind her. Lightning flickered through the glass, illuminating the unsigned contract folder she held against her chest like a shield, the Meridian Infrastructure Group logo gleaming gold under the chandeliers. She said nothing at all, only smiled the smallest, coldest smile, while the storm outside began to gather strength, rain starting to lash the balcony doors in angry sheets. Daniel turned away laughing, already pulling Vanessa toward the dance floor, certain he had just buried his ex-wife in front of everyone who mattered. Amara watched them go, then slipped through the doors onto the storm-lashed balcony alone, wind whipping her dress, rain soaking her skin as she opened the folder and traced one perfectly manicured finger across the signature line that still waited for tomorrow's ceremony. Her signature line, because Meridian had never been his to save. She closed the folder, looked out at the city lights blurring beneath the downpour, and whispered into the thunder, "Enjoy tonight, Daniel. Tomorrow you learn what nothing really feels like." Amara stepped out of the storm and into the private elevator that rose silently to the penthouse she had never left, the one Daniel believed he had stripped from her in the divorce settlement, along with everything else. Rainwater streamed from her hair and dress as the mirrored walls reflected a woman no one downstairs would recognize tonight. Not the broken ex-wife, not the pitiable divorcee, but the majority shareholder who had just been handed the golden share veto that made the entire $300 million federal contract hers to award or annihilate. She dropped the soaked folder onto the marble console, opened it beneath the single lamp, and let the pages breathe. There it was, sealed only hours earlier by the Ministry of Works Meridian Infrastructure Group confirmed as prime contractor. Signature line, waiting for her hand alone, because her late father's trust had transferred the deciding 51% plus the irrevocable golden share to her the day she turned 35, 3 weeks ago, while Daniel was still celebrating leaving her for Vanessa. The same trust that had been drafted long before she ever met him, the one whose existence he had mocked as your father's little fantasy company whenever she tried to speak of it during their marriage. She walked deeper into the darkened apartment, past the packed boxes Daniel's movers had never come to collect because the title had never actually changed, and stopped before the floor-to-ceiling window where the storm now raged full force over the city he thought he was about to own. Lightning cracked, illuminating the unsigned contract in her grip, and the thin golden fountain pen clipped inside her pen, her ink, her final say. She traced the embossed Meridian logo her grandfather had designed in 1958, the same logo that would appear on every check, every billboard, every headline Daniel planned to claim tomorrow when he walked into the signing ceremony, believing Brooks Construction had won the bid he had secretly submitted using data stolen from Meridian servers during their marriage, data he assumed no one would ever trace once the divorce buried her. Another flash of lightning turned the glass into a mirror, and she stared at her own reflection, calm, unreadable, already beyond the woman he had humiliated downstairs. She opened the slim leather portfolio beside the window, removed the original share register, still bearing her father's wax seal, and laid it beside the contract. The controlling block was hers. The golden share veto was hers. The board owed her fiduciary duty alone, and the change of control clause buried in the joint venture agreement Daniel had signed years ago, thinking it only protected him, would trigger the instant any outside entity attempted to assume direction of the award. 48 hours until the ceremonial signing. 48 hours until the ministry, the banks, the press, and every subcontractor watched her place that golden pen in someone else's hand, or refused to place it at all. The storm peaked, thunder shaking the windows like applause, and Amara closed the portfolio, closed the contract, closed her eyes for the first time since the gala began. A small, almost soundless exhale left her lips, not rage, not even satisfaction yet, just the quiet, absolute certainty of a woman who no longer needed to scream to be heard. She whispered into the glass and the storm and the night, so softly that only the city lights heard. "Tomorrow you sign nothing, Daniel. Tomorrow I sign everything." Then she turned, leaving wet footprints across the marble that led straight to the safe where the real receipts waited. Amara descended from the penthouse at dawn, the storm now reduced to a low, threatening growl over the city, and entered the secure 23rd floor conference room of Meridian Infrastructure Group, where the lights were already burning and the coffee was already bitter. Mr. Whitaker waited at the head of the polished obsidian table, silver hair, immaculate despite the hour, the original share register and the freshly delivered contract open in front of him like twin altars. Beside him sat Priya Shah, sleeves rolled high, 3 monitors glowing with forensic timelines, server logs, and the quiet green heartbeat of money, moving where it should never have moved. Amara closed the door with a soft click that sounded final, slid into the chair at the opposite end, her father's old chair, and placed the golden fountain pen between them like a loaded weapon. Whitaker did not waste time on pleasantries. He simply rotated the register so the embossed seal caught the light and tapped the single line that mattered, 51%, plus the golden share. Transferred irrevocably to Amara Okafor 3 weeks ago, dormant until tonight. Priya spun one screen toward her, the stolen bid data Daniel had lifted from Meridian's encrypted servers 18 months earlier, sat highlighted in crimson exact specifications, exact costings, exact margins he had repackaged as Brooks Construction's miracle comeback and submitted under his own letterhead. The ministry had chosen Meridian hours ago, unaware that Brooks had ever been in the race, unaware that the joint venture agreement Daniel had forced Amara to sign years earlier when he still controlled the marital assets contained Change of Control Clause 7.2, a clause that automatically revoked any third-party direction the moment an outside entity attempted to execute the award without her written consent. 48 hours remained until the ceremonial signing at the ministry ballroom. 48 hours until Daniel walked in expecting to claim the $300 million lifeline that would erase his debts, marry Vanessa in triumph, and bury Amara forever. Whitaker laid the consent to a signed revocation form already prepared, already notarized, already one signature away from electronic filing with the corporate registry. Priya laid the proxy revocation that would strip Daniel of the single board seat he still believed he held through old marital shares. shares that had dissolved the day the trust activated. They would file at 9:01 a.m. tomorrow, 1 minute after the registry opened, timed so the ministry received the updated ownership notice exactly 24 hours before pens were scheduled to touch paper. No rage, no public accusations, no scenes, only filings, timestamps, and the quiet, unstoppable weight of law. Amara listened as they walked her through every step, every fallback, every lender covenant that would freeze Brooks Construction's credit lines the moment the contract appeared to slip from Daniel's grasp. When they finished, the room was silent, except for the low hum of servers and the distant promise of another storm building over the harbor. She picked up the golden pen, turned it once between her fingers, and set it down again unsigned, unhurried, inevitable. The clock on the wall read 5:47 a.m. 42 hours and 13 minutes left. She looked at both of them, calm as deep water, and nodded once. The plan was set, the receipts were ready, and the countdown had officially begun. Priya Shah's war room glowed ice blue with overlapping screens, while the city outside crawled toward noon, 36 hours left on the invisible clock. She began with the stolen bid itself. Every cost breakdown, every engineering tolerance Daniel had lifted from Meridian's servers matched Brooks Construction's winning submission to the exact decimal. But the metadata told the sharper story creation timestamps clustered during the final months of the marriage, file paths still bearing Meridian's internal drive signatures, and one careless autosave at 2:14 a.m. from the laptop registered to Amara Okafor that Daniel had borrowed and never returned. Printer microdots embedded in the physical copies Daniel had couriered to the ministry revealed the documents had rolled off Meridian's executive floor machine, not his. Ink-age analysis on the hard copy appendices showed two distinct batches, Meridian's archival stock for the legitimate bid, cheaper commercial ink for the pages Daniel had swapped in at the last minute to hide his tracks. Priya overlaid the joint venture agreement he had insisted Amara sign years earlier, zooming until Change of Control Clause 7.2 filled an entire wall. Any attempt by a third party to exercise direction over a Meridian-awarded contract without the Golden shareholders' written consent triggered automatic revocation and granted the majority owner unilateral termination rights. Whitaker fed the clause into the registry portal, alongside the freshly executed proxy revocation that stripped Daniel of the single board seat he still believed he held. The filing timestamp locked at 9:01 a.m. sharp. A brief scare flickered when the portal flagged a duplicate director, listing Daniel had quietly refiled outdated paperwork 6 months ago. But Priya countered within 90 seconds by uploading the trust activation certificate and the deathbed codicil her grandfather had sealed in 1997, both notarized, both predating Daniel's existence in Amara's life. The registry accepted the correction without human review. Lender covenants surfaced next. 3 banks holding Brooks Construction's revolving credit had signed side letters requiring immediate notification of any material adverse change in contract ownership. Priya scheduled the automated notices for 8 a.m. tomorrow, 24 hours before the ceremony, timed to freeze every line of credit Daniel planned to parade in front of the cameras. Forensic accountants traced the $1.8 million Daniel had siphoned from a dormant Meridian subsidiary to finance Vanessa's engagement ring transaction codes still carried the approval initials he had forged using Amara's old login. Whitaker prepared the ethics memo, terse and lethal, ready to land in every board member's inbox the moment the ministry doors opened. By late afternoon, the montage was complete. Digital breadcrumbs, ink lies, forged paths, and iron clauses, all aligned into a single, flawless guillotine. Amara stood at the window watching sunlight finally break through the storm's remnants, the golden pen turning slowly between her fingers. Nothing was left to chance, no document unsigned, no loophole unclosed. 30 hours remained, and every receipt was now sharpened, stamped, and queued for delivery. She set the pen down beside the contract that would never be his, turned back to the screens, and allowed herself the smallest exhale of anticipation. The blade was ready. All that remained was the fall. 24 hours before the signing ceremony, the city belonged to Daniel Brooks again, or so every headline screamed. Morning talk shows replayed the gala clip on loop, his arm around Vanessa, his mocking toast to the ex-wife he had finally crushed, while financial channels flashed, Brooks Construction secures landmark $300M contract, across ticker tapes that had not yet received the registry update. Billboards along the expressway already carried his grinning face above the slogan, "Building Tomorrow Today," paid for with the last bridge loan he would ever draw. Vanessa spent the afternoon live streaming from the bridal suite of the presidential hotel, twirling in a preview wedding gown worth more than most subcontractors earned in a year, tagging sponsors, thanking my king for proving that real men finish first. Daniel hosted a champagne brunch for investors on the terrace of the same hotel, signing autographs on glossy copies of the unsigned contract, promising triple-digit returns the moment the ministry ink dried. Reporters ate from his hand. Politicians sent congratulatory bouquets. Even the ministry press officer called to confirm the red carpet arrival order, Brooks Construction first, naturally. Across town, Amara sat alone in the Meridian boardroom with the blinds half drawn, sunlight striping the table like prison bars, watching every broadcast on muted screens while the golden fountain pen rested untouched beside the real contract. She wore the same simple black dress from the gala, now dry cleaned and pressed, hair pulled back severe, no jewelry except the thin gold watch her father had given her the day she graduated. Phones buzzed with invitations she ignored. Daniel had made certain she received the gilded envelope personally delivered by courier. Join us tomorrow as we celebrate the future guest of honor seating for old time's sake. She set the invitation aside without opening it, eyes calm as deep water. Priya's final update arrived encrypted. Registry filing confirmed. Lender notices dispatched. Ethics memo queued for 8 tomorrow. The guillotine was cocked. Amara stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the traffic crawling toward the ministry building where tomorrow's circus would unfold. Somewhere below, Daniel was laughing in a tailored tuxedo, Vanessa sparkling on his arm, both of them certain they had already won. She watched the clouds part fully for the first time in days, bright afternoon light flooding the streets he believed he was about to own, and felt nothing but the steady, quiet pulse of inevitability. The city glittered for him today. Tomorrow it would watch him fall. She turned from the window, picked up the golden pen, and slipped it into the inner pocket of the blazer she would wear to the ceremony, close to her heart, ready for the only signature that now mattered. 12 hours remained, and Daniel Brooks had never stood taller. Amara closed the blinds, dimming his sunshine, and allowed the room to sink into the cool, waiting dark. His peak was perfect. The drop would be cleaner for it. The ministry ballroom sparkled with crystal and expectation at precisely 10 o'clock. Cameras already rolling as Daniel Brooks strode to the long mahogany table in a midnight blue suit, Vanessa glittering beside him. The unsigned $300 million contract waiting beneath the flags like a coronation document. He flashed the grin that had sold yesterday's headlines, shook the minister's hand, and reached for the ceremonial pen the staff had placed at his setting, only to watch Amara Okafor step forward from the Meridian side of the table, calm as sunrise, and lay the golden fountain pen beside her own copy instead. The room hushed. Mr. Carlyle, board chair, rose without drama and activated the wall projector. Side-by-side bid documents appeared, Meridian's pristine originals beside Brooks Construction's submission metadata, timestamps glowing crimson, printer microdots enlarged, stolen costings circled in merciless red. Whitaker slid the registry extract across the table. 51% plus golden share, irrevocably vested in Amara Okafor. Proxy revocation, time-stamped 9/1 a.m. Yesterday, change of control clause. 7.2, highlighted in cold yellow. Carlyle's voice cut the stunned silence like glass. The clause was read aloud once, slowly. every syllable landing heavier than the last night's thunder. The minister's face drained of color. Bankers in the front row reached for phones already vibrating with credit freeze alerts. Daniel lunged forward, voice cracking across the ballroom, but security materialized before he touched the table. The contract was declared suspended, pending ownership clarification effective immediately. Cameras caught everything. Vanessa's diamonds suddenly too loud against her trembling hand. Daniel's face cycling from confusion to rage to the pale realization that the lifeline had never been his. By noon, the feeds exploded, headlines flipping from triumph to theft, lenders calling margins, subcontractors pulling crews, investors evaporating. Daniel raced to the Meridian Tower, only to find the gates locked, access badges dead, rain beginning again as he pounded on the intercom in the same storm that had watched Amara vow revenge. She appeared on the covered driveway beneath a black umbrella held by Priya, dress the color of deep water, expression unreadable. He begged through the downpour, offered apologies, threats, tears, but Amara looked at him the way one regards a stranger who once borrowed something precious and broke it. She said nothing at all. The gates stayed closed. Months later, the skyline carried new Meridian cranes, roads and bridges, rising under the same logo her grandfather sketched in 1958. While Brooks' construction dissolved in quiet bankruptcy, and Daniel's name vanished from every bidder's list he once ruled. Amara stood on the completed river bridge at dawn, golden pen now retired to a small foundation office that bore her father's name, watching sunlight replace the last of the storm clouds that had followed her for years. The city moved beneath her alive, rebuilt, hers not by vengeance but by right. She slipped the pen into her pocket, turned her face to the clear sky, and walked forward into the quiet, unbreakable peace that comes after the receipts have spoken and the thunder has finally gone home.